Hi. Okay, so welcome to my video on Excel summary functions and charts. Now, if you're following along with the with Excel at home, what you'll need to do is go into Fanshawe Online, and in Fanshawe Online, click on Content, then click on Summary Functions and Charts, and in the HTML file that shows up there, go down to Learning Tasks, and within Learning Tasks you'll see a file called EXL02 Expenditures. So I want you to open that file, have it open on your desktop as we're working through this together. Alright, so once you've got that open, so just pause the video until you have the file open, and once you have it open you'll notice that there are I've got a third worksheet here called Topics, but you'll have the Expenditures worksheet and you'll have the Details worksheet. So Topics is something I'm just going to start adding each week just to keep you in sync with the textbook and within Fanshawe Online, because they'll all be identified by the skills that we're covering each week. So there's the skills, skill 1 to 10, there's the title in the textbook, and here's what we're going to be covering within each week. So skill 1, align and wrap text, we're going to look at formatting, filling a series, auto-fitting column widths, and indent. Skill 2 is all about absolute reference. Skill 3 is about formatting numbers. We're also going to talk about cell styles, the quick analysis lens, and summary functions. Skill 4 and Skill 5 are about inserting summary functions. Skill 6 is starting into charts, and then Skill 9 is word art, and then in Skill 10 it's all about preview and print. Okay, so click over on the expenditures chart. So as I said at the in our first video, in Excel, you really want to understand the purpose of the spreadsheet. So this particular spreadsheet is keeping track of expenditures by department across 4 quarters, and we're going to be adding a bunch of formatting to this. We're going to change some things around. We're going to add some headings. We're going to calculate the percentage of expenditures, and then we're going to calculate average, lowest, and highest, and so on. Okay, now you'll notice this other worksheet called Details. We're not going to be doing anything on that worksheet, but it's just a very common process that when you're dealing with lots of numbers. So you can see here for each group there's legislative, there's 3 numbers there for the different departments. First, second, third, and fourth quarter, these 3 numbers would be added up and then would display here for first quarter. So it's quite common in Excel that you'll have a details worksheet that carries all your detail information, and then a summary worksheet where you summarize that information, so that your decision makers don't have to worry about the detail. They're just focused on the summaries in this case. Okay, all right. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fill handle. So we've talked about the fill handle before. The fill handle is that little black square on the bottom right corner of the active cell. And what the fill handle is used for, and what we used it for last week, was to copy a formula, and with relative addressing it automatically adjusted the formula as you copied it. Today we're going to use it for a second purpose. Now, to show it to you, I'm going to basically, what I want to do is I want to put second quarter in here, third quarter in here, and fourth quarter in here. I can simply type them in, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, but there's a faster way to do that. To show you how to use the fill handle for extending a series, I'm going to open up a new worksheet. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of the screen, click on that little circle with a plus sign in it, which will create a brand new worksheet. You can see it here called sheet number 4. So the fill handle, not only is the fill handle good for copying and pasting a formula, but you can also use the fill handle to extend a series. So I'm going to type in here MON for Monday and hit enter to accept it, and then I'm going to take the fill handle and I'm going to drag that down, and you can see now that not only does a fill handle work for copying a formula, but it also is used to extend a series. So I've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and over and so on. Once I've done that, I get this little pop-up box at the bottom called autofill options, and here I can override what's been done. So let's say for whatever reason I did want it to go Monday, 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 then I could change it from fill series to copy cells, and then it would just change it to Monday all the way down. I have the options for fill formatting, fill without formatting, which we'll look at a little bit later. Fill days, so Monday to Sunday. I could just say fill weekends, so Monday to Friday, weekdays, sorry, Monday to Friday, and so on. I can use the fill handle in a number of different situations. I could type in a date. Let's go February 1st, 2016. and then I can use my fill handle to copy that down, and you can see that I go February, so 2016, I showed that because it's a leap year, so you can see it goes to February 29th, and then it starts over on March the 1st. If I did this year, it would only go to February 28th, so it's smart enough to know how to do that. You can use it to do things like if I want January the 1st, 2019, and then I want to go weekly, so I'm going to go January the 8th, 2019, all right. I can highlight both of those and then extend the series, and it'll just give me weekly. So January the 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th, February the 5th, 12th, and so on and so forth. I can do things like QDR1 and carry it across, goes quarter 1 to 4, starts over again at 1, and so on. So the fill handle, now so the one thing too is that if you're doing a regular series, like here I only need to click on the first one and drag it down. But in this one, because I wanted the increment to be 7 days at a time, I have to put in 2. I have to put in the start date and the second date. Let's show you an example here. If I put in a 2 here and a 4 here, so I want it to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, then I have to highlight them both because I need to know the starting number and the increment. And then I can highlight and drag to get my fill. Okay? All right. So let's go back to the textbook. I'm going to delete this worksheet because I don't need it anymore. So I simply right-click on the worksheet and I click on Delete and accept the prompt, and I'm back. So now I'm going to go back to expenditures. Okay? So now that we're here, I'm going to use the fill handle to extend that series across. So now I've got second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Okay. Now, I'm going to highlight all my headings, not the word expenditures, but just the headings down here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a couple of different formats to that. So I'm going to use, the first one I'm going to do is something called wrap text. And what wrap text will do, if I take a look at this particular cell, you can see that I've got percent of expenditures and expenditures running over onto here. But the reason is that, again, because this cell is empty, it simply carries that heading across. I could drag the column width and make it wide enough for the whole heading to display, but the problem with that is that I don't need that wide a cell for what's going to display in those cells. So what I want to do is I want to have my headings wrap around inside the text, inside the cell. So I'm going to select all my headings, and then in the alignment group on the Home tab, I'm going to go to here where it says wrap text. When I click on that, it automatically changes the row height, and it automatically formats the text to fit within that new row height. Now here you can see it's not perfect because I've got percent of and then expenditures is here, so I'm going to simply grab the heading and widen that enough so that it displays. Now also within a cell you've got 6 levels of alignment. You've got top, middle, bottom, left, center, and right. So top would be here. Middle is going to put it in the middle of the cell, and bottom is going to put it at the bottom of the cell. Right is going to move the text to the right margin. Center is going to put it in the middle, and left is going to put it in the left margin. So in this particular heading, I actually want it to go in the middle and in the center so that I have my headings that look like this. Okay, now we've also talked about underlying value versus displayed value. So if I click on cell A5, you can see that in the displayed value, it's truncated, cut off the heading at the edge of the row, at the edge of the column. If I look up on my formula bar, you can see that it actually has the whole heading is still there. So the underlying value is the word city development, but the displayed value is truncated because the column's not wide enough. One of the ways we talked about last week to change your column width is to move your cursor up between the border between the two cells, click, so you can see the little pop-up box that says the width right now is 13.14, and I could drag it so that it displays. The problem with that is that I don't know, it's slower, and it doesn't necessarily give you the widest one. If I look down here, total expenditures is still going to be cut off, and so on and so forth. So there's another command called autofit, and what autofit will do is it automatically adjusts the column width to fit the widest cell in the column. To do that, move your cursor up between column A and column B, and then double click. So when I double click, it will automatically adjust the column width for the whole column. If I select columns B through G, So remember, we talked last week that when you highlight a range, whatever you have highlighted, anything you do is going to affect everything that's highlighted. So here I can change the column width, so I'm going to click on any one of the columns. Right now they're 12. I'm going to change them to 14. Alright. Oh, one thing I didn't mention before, let me change that back again. Notice here this hash marks. If a column isn't wide enough for text, it will simply truncate it. But if a column's not wide enough for numbers, it will display hash marks. And that's because you can't truncate a number, because it would change the way the number appears. So in this particular case, you can see that the hash marks are showing here. If I hover over top of it, I can see the value. But the reality here is that I want the columns to be wider, so I'm going to change that back to 14. So now my numbers display. Okay. You can also notice that once I've done that, remember I told you last week that this dashed line down the screen tells you what's on page 1 and what's on page 2. If I was to print this right now, everything to the left of that line would print on page 1, and I would have this one orphan column called percent of expenditures, which would print on page 2. At the end of the lesson today, we're going to show you how to correct that. Okay, and the final thing in step 1 was to do an indent. So I'm going to select these cells here, the legislative to capital works, and I simply just want a little bit of an indent to make them stand out a bit. So once I've got them selected, I'm going to go back up to the alignment group, and I'm going to click on increase indent, and it will add the indent. And the more times you increase, so as I click on it each time, it increases the indent, and then I can decrease the indent using the decrease indent option. Okay, all right, so that's basically it for skill number 1. We're moving on to skill number 2, which is apply absolute reference. So the first thing I need here is I need totals in here. So we talked last week about using the sum function, so I'm going to do this in a couple of different ways. So first of all, I'll just select the cell that I want the sum function to be in, and then in the Home tab I'm going to click up here on Sigma, which is auto sum. And when I do that, it's going to display the sum function, and again I'm going to have this border, the dash border, which tells me that the Excel thinks that's the cells that I want, and if that's correct I could hit enter, which it is, and I have my total. Then I can use my fill handle. So remember, I've got a formula here that's the sum of B3 to B10. I'm going to want to take that and I'm going to copy it across to here, and it's going to change B10 to C10 to D10 to E10 to F10. Okay, so that's one way to do this. I'm also going to show you another way here. So I'm going to select this range of cells, and when I do, I get a new little box that shows up called the Quick Analysis Lens. Now this is not available on a Mac. So on a Mac you still have to go back and do the auto sum and then drag it across. On a PC, the Quick Analysis Lens is something that was new. Hold on. So what the Quick Analysis Lens allows you to do is to do a number of tasks. So whenever you select a range, you can click the Quick Analysis Lens, and this new menu will pop up so that I could do formatting, charts, totals, tables, or sparklines. So in this case, we're going to go totals, and I want to do a sum, and if I hit the button, it'll automatically put the totals in. So that's the Quick Analysis Lens. I'm not going to use that a lot during the course because first of all, it's not available on the Mac, and I'm just kind of old school. I haven't used it very much, so I'm not going to probably do it much. Okay, so now that I have my totals, now I want to put in my percent of expenditures. So in here, what I want to know is how much of the total budget or total expenditures of $30 million, how much of it was spent by the legislative group. To do that, I'm going to have to take this legislative total and divide it by the total of all expenditures. So that's a simple formula. We did this last week. I'm going to say equals my legislative divided by my total. And I hit enter, and I get my value, which is showing as roughly 4%. I'm going to go in here to formats. I'm going to change that to a percentage format, and I'm going to add 2 decimal points to make it show as 4.6%. Now I'm going to use my fill handle to copy that down. However, when I do that, I get a bunch of division by zero errors, and this is because of relative addressing. Remember, with relative addressing, when you take a formula and you use the fill handle to copy that formula down, it adjusts the values. So in this cell, I've got F3 divided by F11. If I copy it down, it's going to make it F4 divided by F12, and then F5 divided by F13, and so on. So in this case, relative addressing doesn't work for me, because relative addressing is not taking into account or is automatically adjusting all the cells. In this case, I only want the first cell to change. I want the second one to stay at F11. So to fix that, I have to use something called an absolute reference. So in the formula, what I can do is I can click and I can put a $sign in front of the F, and I can put a $sign in front of the 11, and that tells Excel that when you're copying this formula, do not change this cell reference. So if I accept that and click and drag my formula down, now I get the proper formula. But there is a faster way. So I'm going to delete all of that. I'm going to do it all over again. So I'm going to say equals F3 divided by F11. But now I'm going to use function key F4, and what function key F4 will do is automatically put the $signs in for me. Now it doesn't mean you can't type them in, so you could type them in if you want, but F4 is a much faster way to do that. And then I hit enter and click and drag to have my values show up. Okay. All right. Skill number 3, formatting numbers. So there are a number of different types of number formats. Let's just take a look here. If I click on the drop down here, you can see that I have general, so there's no specific formatting. I have number format, which is going to put 2 decimal points on it, currency format, and accounting format, which are basically look very similar, but they actually show quite a bit differently. And then we've got a whole bunch of date formats and so on and so forth. So in our case, what we want to focus on is the difference between currency format and accounting format. In this particular case, accounting format, what accounting format does is it puts a $sign. So this is accounting format here. So it's put a $sign at the far left margin, and you can see it's hard to tell, but there's actually a space underneath after the 32. Okay, and that's because in accounting format, when you have a negative number, it puts brackets around the number. So it needs the space at the end, so that if you do have a negative number, it's not going to change the positioning of your decimal point, because you want your decimal points to line up. So this is accounting format, which is the primary way that you're going to be dealing with numbers in a financial situation. Currency format, I'm going to change this to currency just so you can see the difference. With currency format, it puts the $sign right in front of the number, and it doesn't leave a space at the end for the bracket. So if I had a negative number, then I'm going to have my decimal points not line up anymore. So most of the time you're going to be using accounting format. All right, accounting format is this one up here, so you can see the $sign. If I hover over top, it says accounting number format. And I can also go over here to cell styles, and you can see here I've got currency, currency 0. Now this is a bit of a misnomer, because even though it says currency, it's not currency format, it's accounting format. So I don't know why they haven't changed this, because it bugs me. It's been like this for years. It should actually say accounting and accounting 0, and the 0 simply means with no decimal points. Comma and comma 0 is accounting format without the decimal points. So if I was to look here, so this one here is comma format, comma style, which is format with 1,000 separator, and here is accounting number format with dollars and so on and so forth. In Canadian accounting processes, or Canadian accounting and United States for that matter, your numbers should always have accounting format on the top row, so you can see the $signs here, and it should have accounting number format on the bottom row. It should have comma number format on all the cells in between. So comma format is accounting format without the $sign. So I still have the space at the end, and if there was a $sign, of course, it would be at the end there. And the last thing is that your bottom row should have a cell style called total, which puts a single line above and a double line below, bolds it, and puts it in accounting format. Okay, so that is proper Canadian accounting format. So $signs on the top, $signs on the bottom, no $signs in between, and a single line above and a double line below. So just keep that in mind as you're working through your data. Okay, so skills number 4 and 5 are going to be, so basically what I want in here is I want my average expenditure. So the average, of course, is going to be the total of all of these divided by the number of this. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8. So it's going to be 6,730,000 divided by 8 is going to give me my average. I don't want to have to do that math. I'm going to simply let Excel do that for me. And to do that, I'm going to select average expenditure, and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go back to autofill. But if I click the arrow beside it, you see I also have the option for average, count, max, and min. So I'm going to click on average. So you can see what it does. It automatically puts the average in for me. But here's a circumstance where Excel is not selecting the correct cells. You can see that what it's done here is it's gone from the legislative and including the total. Well, of course, you don't want the total, so I'm going to have to select the proper range and hit enter. I'm going to do the same thing for the lowest expenditure. So again, I'm going to click min, and here, of course, it's way wrong. And I'm just going to select the range, not including the total, hit enter. And here I'm going to do the max, which is the same thing. I'm going to click on max, select the proper range, and hit enter. Now I can select these three, and I can use the fill handle to copy them across, because my formula is average B3 to B10. So if I move it, copy it over here, it's going to be C3 to C10, D3, and so on. So I'm going to click and drag to get my averages, lowest and max. Okay, so that's skills 4 and skill 5. Skill number 6 is to create a column chart. So charts are basically a visual representation of numbers. They're there for your audience to be able to take a look at how the numbers relate to each other without having to worry about all the detailed numbers. So when we're working with charts, charts are very simple within Excel. You have to simply select the range of cells that you want to chart, and then you create the type of chart that you want. Okay, so we're going to create a 2D custom or clustered column chart. To do that, we're going to select A2 to E10. So normally when you're creating a column chart is used when you want to compare one set of numbers against another. You never include your totals in a column chart, because the total would be simply another row which would make all the rest of the numbers look small, because of course the total is the total. So, and the other thing to remember when you're creating a chart is you have to include your total, your headers. Okay, so if you don't include the headings, then I'm going to have a problem with side. Okay, I'm just going to make this smaller. Okay, so I'm going to select my range, and I'm going to go to Insert, and over here in Charts, there's all my different types of charts. So there's column charts, and that's all. And we're going to use column charts and pie charts today. So column charts are when you're looking to compare columns. So how did the legislative group do against in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, or against the other groupings. A line chart is when you want to check something how it's progressing over time. So stock prices is a good example, or the price of shoes, or what have you. And pie charts are when you want to look at how is a particular number comparing to all the other numbers in the group. And we're going to do a pie chart in a minute. So let's just click on a column chart. You can see you have a number of different options. So you have column, 2D column, you have a stacked column where they put this. So if you look here at the 2D column, you can see they've got a separate column chart for each value. Here it stacks them one on top of the other one. Here it makes them all 100% and shows you the percentage value. 3D column are simply just a different way of looking at the numbers. And then there's something called a 3D column. I really don't like these types of charts. You can see here that if you look at the example that you can see below, they add a third dimension called depth. So the numbers, the trouble with these is it's very difficult to take a look at the numbers. So we're going to focus on clustered column. A bar chart is basically the column chart turned on its side. So let's create a column chart. Now, in the column chart, it's going to bring up a brand new menu called Chart Tools, our chart brand new tab, and within the Chart Tools you have a Design tab and a Format tab. So we're going to go through those in a minute. I'm going to move this chart, so when I move my cursor over top of the chart, I can now grab it and move it to a different location. So I'm just going to put it, let's put it over here for now. This may not be where it tells you to do it in the examples, but that's fine. So just make sure when you're working with My IT Lab that when you move a chart that you leave the corners inside a cell. Don't put them right at the very edge of the cell, because My IT Lab might mark it incorrect. Make sure that you've got some definition around the outside of that cell so that you can see around the edges. Same thing here. I'm going to just close that up a little bit, and there I've got the chart set up where I want it to go. Once I have the chart, I'll have my two new menus, the Design menu and the Format menu. The Design menu is how you add components to the chart, and the Format menu is how you would change the format of individual items within the chart. So let's go back to Design for a minute. Add chart elements. If I click on the box here, it gives me all the different parts that I can add to a chart. We'll come back to those in a second. Quick layout are different combinations of chart elements. Colors would change, of course, the colors. Styles, you can see if I look at different styles for the chart, you've got different combinations of colors and effects. Switch rows and columns we won't worry about today. Select data we won't worry about today. Here I could change the chart, and move chart moves it to a whole new worksheet. So we'll come back to that in a minute. And then format would change information within the thing, within them. So let's go back to Design. I'm going to go back to the very first option. All right, let's find one that doesn't have a whole bunch of headings on it. Okay, I'll just fix that here. Okay, so once I have created that chart, I've got these two boxes here, Chart Elements and Design, Style. So these boxes here, so this box here is the same as Add Chart up here. The styles, you can see the styles are here. The styles are basically the same as what you've got here. So if you don't have to use these buttons here, you can simply use the buttons up here as to do the same sort of a thing. All right, let's take a look at the different components of a chart. So on this chart I have a title, I have a value axis which has the numbers on it, I have a category axis which has my categories across it, I have my data series, so each one of these lines is a series. So this particular series is the fourth quarter, this particular series is the first quarter. If I click twice, then I'm going to get a particular item. So this is the first quarter data point, so this is the data point, so this is the data series, whoops, which is all of the numbers, and then a second click is going to highlight on a particular data point. Alright, this is my plot area. Oh, those are my grid lines. This is the plot area, this is the chart area, this is my legend, which tells me what the different colors mean, and so on. So these are all the things that you can see here, axis, axis title, and so on. Let's see if I can widen this up a little bit. Okay, so again, if I click on the chart, so axis titles, so that you can see it puts a little title beside each of the axis. Chart title is the chart title up here. Data labels, data table, error bars we're not going to worry about, and then the legend right now is at the bottom. If I click this arrow, I can change this to the, again, this is something you're not being able to see. Okay, so if I go to legend, if I click the box here, you can see that you can have the positioning. So right now it's at the bottom, I can move it to the left, to the top, to the right, or I always have the option called More Options, which we're going to come back to in a little bit. Okay, I want to change the chart title, so I'm going to click on the chart title. Let me move this back. Once I've selected the title, I can type in my new title. So you can see that it's going up here in the formula bar. When I hit enter, it'll replace the title on the chart. Now, one of the things that's an underlying function or whatever within Excel is that whenever you put information into a chart, it has to put it inside a container. So right now you can identify the current active container because of those little dots that you can see on the outside. So the dots that I can see on the outside of my title here tell me that that's the active container. If I then go up into my Format tab, you can see that I have shape styles and I have word art styles. So basically inside a container you have the ability to change the color inside the container and the color of the text in the container. So I could go in here to shape fill and add a fill color to that container. I can go over here to text and I can change the color of the text itself. Okay, so shape fill would add a fill color, and then my information here changes the text color. Anytime I have a container, so if I have this container, which is the chart area, I can go up here and change the shape fill color. Alright, I can go over here and change the color of all the text inside that container. So just understand that when you're working within Excel, containers, you have the ability to change pretty much anything. And you'll see these commands available quite a bit within Excel. Okay. Now, one of the things that I can look at, if I look at this chart, you can see this one number looks way out of line. Okay, and that's because usually because you can see all these other, or kind of this whatever color that is, burnt orange I guess, you can see that all the other ones are fairly small. So that usually is an indicator that maybe there's a problem here that I have to look at. So I'm going to take a look at, so that's capital projects, so here, so there's my spreadsheet, and you can see here that it's 390, 400,000, 411,000, and then 3 million. So there's probably a mistake there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that. I'm going to get rid of the 3. And notice that not only does it change it here, but it also changes it on the chart. Alright, so your chart and your numbers are linked together. If you make a change in the chart, or you make a change in your numbers, it'll automatically change in the chart. If I was to change a heading, it will also change it on the chart. Okay? Alright. So, let's see here what else we want to cover off. Alright, I'm going to click here on the chart area, and I'm going to click, let's see here, let's right click and go to Format Chart Area, which brings me this box, which I put way over on my other screen. So within the chart area I have the option to go to Fill, so I'm going to change that to a gradient fill. And I can change the colors and what have you. Okay. So basically to do that, what I did was I right clicked on the chart and then I went to Format Chart Area. Okay. I think I could have also gone to, not from here, so okay, let's just do it from that way. The other way to do it is to go up onto the Format command, and here you can see in the far right was this current selection. There's chart area, Format Selection, which will bring up the dialog box to allow me to make the changes. So there's the fill, there's my effects, and there's size and properties. Okay. So I'm going to change the style. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to select style number 3. So that will change the style of the chart. I could have also done that from up here. So there's style 3 right there. Okay. Let's change the layout to quick layout number 9. So there's quick layouts. So if I change it to number 9, you can see what it does is it adds access titles. Then I would simply click on the title and say dollars and departments. I can click on my legend, go to here to legend, move that to the bottom, and again that's off your screen, so you're not going to see that, but if you were to click on the arrow at the end, you're going to see that it moves across. Alright, I'm still learning how to use this tool, so just bear with me as we work through this here. Alright, so let's create a pie chart now. Let's just see what we want to do here. Alright, so a pie chart is used when you want to look at a number compared to it. So I told you in column charts you don't usually show the totals. Pie charts are usually just the totals. The difference between a column chart and a pie chart. So in this particular column chart you can see that I have 4 different categories. So I've got first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter for each of the departments. On a pie chart, all I can do is one single data series. I can't do 4 data series like I have in here. So I'm going to select all my departments, and I want to select my departments, and I want to select my department totals. So before, when we selected a range, you would click on the on the top left, and then drag to identify your series. But in this case, it also gives you all the numbers in between, which isn't what I want. I want just the departments and just the department totals. To do that, I'm going to select departments. Then I'm going to, after I've selected it, I'm going to hold the control key down and select department totals. Now, it's really important here that when you're selecting non-contiguous ranges, in other words, ranges that don't touch each other, you have to select the first range before you touch the control key. Do not hit the control key until after you've selected that first range. Select that range, then hold your control key down and select the second range. Then I can go to Insert. I'm going to go to Pie Charts. I'm going to select a 3D pie, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so there's all my different groups, and there's how they show up in the percentage. Now what I want to do is I'm going to move that to something called a chart sheet. To do that, I'm going to, once I've got that chart selected, I'm going to go up here to Move Chart. And I'm going to say a new sheet, and I will call it Pie Chart. And click OK. So what I will end up with now is a brand new worksheet. So I got a worksheet called Pie Chart, and that worksheet takes up the whole page. Understand that a chart sheet is not the same as a spreadsheet. Notice that I don't have rows and columns. I don't have A, B, C, D across the top and numbers down the left hand side. It's automatically just one chart, one sheet for a whole chart. I still have my Chart Tools option, and there's my Design tab and my Format tab, so it's no different than before, but I have that chart taking up that full page. Okay, I'm going to select a style, so I'm going to select style number 8, so that's number 6. So there's style number 8, and you can see that it puts headings out across around the outside. Alright, let me just check and see what we're doing here. Okay. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to actually have values displaying here. So right now I can see Public Works. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click on Data Labels, and I'm going to click the arrow beside it, and I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom to here to More Options. That's going to bring up this Format Data Labels dialog box. And within here I can determine what I want to display. So right now I've got the category name, which is legislative and so on. I'm going to add the value, or sorry, I'm just going to add the percentage. So now you can see that legislative is 3% and so on and so forth. Where I want those labels to display, I'm going to put them into inside end. and number formats I'm going to leave alone. So I'm going to close that. Now you can't see them because the numbers are hidden in the values. So I'm going to go to my Home tab, and I'm going to change the fill color to white. Okay, and if I go back to my Format tab, I could do things like shape fill. So because these are selected, I know that all these are selected because the circles around the outside. Remember, each one of these is an individual container. So as a container, I can change the color of the container itself, and I can change the color of the text within that container. So I can change the shape fill to a different color. I've got white on white, of course. The shape outline, shape effects, I can add effects to those, so I could put a shadow on them. Here I'm going to change the color of the text inside, so I'm going to change it to black. I could add a special effect to the text. I can change the border color on the text, and so on and so forth. So all of those are my options within that. Okay. Now the one thing too is, before, when we added a header, we added headers and footers before, we went to the insert command and we went to text, headers and footers. When I do that on a chart sheet, I get a totally different box. On a spreadsheet, I get the 3 boxes at the top and the 3 boxes at the bottom. But on a chart sheet, I end up with, I have to go to custom header to get my 3 boxes, or custom footer to get my 3 boxes. So if I wanted to put, let's say, the file name, I can click here to put the file name in here. I could click here to say put the sheet name in, and so on. So on a chart sheet, you're going to have a different headers and footers than you have on a regular sheet. Okay, so that was basically skill number 8. We're moving on to skill number 9. So I'm going to go back to the expenditures worksheet. Now what they want us to do here is to add 3 blank lines at the top of the spreadsheet. So let me just bring that up. I want to add three blank lines here. I can do it one at a time. I can click here, and I could say, go to the Home tab, Insert, Sheet Row, and I could do that 3 times. Or I can highlight 3 rows, and I can say Insert, Sheet Rows, and it'll add 3 at once. Then they want us to add word art. I'm going to pause it. Hopefully that worked. Okay, so now I'm going to insert word art. So to add word art here, I'm going to go to the insert command and go to text and word art. So I pick the one that they want. So they want us to use, let's see here. Well, it doesn't matter. As you hover over top of each one, you're going to see what it looks like. And again, you're not going to be able to see this. Let me just drag everything over a bit so that, again, if I do a text, insert word art. Okay, so there's your different word art options. As you hover over each one, it'll show you what they are. So I'm just going to select one at random here. As soon as I do, I'm going to get the word your text here. I'm going to type in Aspen Falls. Okay, let me drag this back. Okay, so again, now that's a container. So again, I have all of the options. So there's all my fill options. There's my text options. So text fill, text border, text effects, shape fill, shape outline, shape effects. I'm going to take that, I'm going to make it smaller, so I'm going to go to the Home tab, change the size, and I'm going to click, drag, and drop in those 3 blank cells that I put up at the top. Okay, And again, one of the other things too is you can always use your cursor or your mouse to change things. But once you've got a box selected, you can also use your arrow keys to move it. Sometimes it's a little easier to move with the arrow keys than it is to use the mouse. All right, finally, preview and print. So right now, as you can see, this is going to print on page 1, but because of these dashed lines, this is going to print on page 2, and this is going to print on page 2. I'm just going to grab the chart and move it down here for a minute. And if I scroll down, you can see that that's the end of page 1 down here. So basically, I don't want that to happen. I want this to print on the same page. The page layout option or tab is how you affect how your spreadsheet is going to print. So here's my margins that are the space around the outside of the text of the chart, the worksheet. Orientation, so right now it's set up to landscape. Okay, so that's fine. Size is whatever, but I also want to go in here to, why is it not working? Oh, all right. So there's the orientation. So right now it's set up to portrait. So I must have been inside the chart. That's why. Okay. So I'm going to change that to landscape. So as soon as I change it to landscape, it's now going to fit on one page. So you can see now it's going over to column I. If it wasn't big enough, if I still had a little bit over, I could change the scale of this. So in other words, shrink the chart width and height. So width here and height here to make it fit. I'm going to go to print preview, so file, print, and there's what my chart would look like if it was to print. Okay. One thing to be aware of is that when you're working with charts, if you're inside the chart and you go to print, it will only print the chart. If you're in the spreadsheet and print, it'll print the spreadsheet and the chart. Okay. You also have an option in your print menu to change your scaling here, so I can change it to make it smaller or larger. I can change my orientation here and so on. And the other thing that you have is if I click on margins and custom margins, I can determine how it's going to print on the page. So I can click on center horizontally and vertically, which would move it to the middle of the page. So you can see that it adjusted it to fit on the center of the page. Alright, so basically guys, that's it for this one. A little bit disjointed, but it'll get better as I get more comfortable with doing these. And thanks very much, and I hope you find it valuable. Bye.